Yo, what is up guys, Driv here, and in today's video I'm going to share with you guys every single thing I've learned about how to easily smash the Trial of the Ancestors mechanic. I'm going to share with you guys the best units I've found, strategies, tactics, and overall way to run the mechanic so you don't fail, you get maximum rewards, and most importantly, you finish it fast. So I'm up around 1700 rating here, and I can tell you that it's not about your character too much at all. You can actually get rounds done without doing any damage at all. It's really about how you position yourself and what units you take. A quick disclaimer here though, I am playing a ranged bow character, so if you're playing something like melee or a proximity skill like RF, you may need to adjust a few things to suit your playstyle. There is also dedicated characters for Trial of the Ancestors, which we'll talk a little bit about at the end of the video, which are incredibly exploitative and can get around using some of these strategies and use even stronger ones. But we're going to focus on traditional gameplay for this video. So to kick us off, I'm going to give you guys the advanced class here on the game board and what all the positions do. You might have a basic understanding, but really understanding the positions is going to allow you to know exactly which units are strong and why, but more importantly, some super exploitative strategies to completely crush the enemy without any trouble at all. So the first position here is the attacker. So the attacker is actually going to be one of the most important units that you can get your hands on. And the reason for that is that it can both attack and defend. Traditionally, the attacker will generally just push forward into the enemy's base, try and defeat any enemies they come across, and if there's no enemies to defeat, they will attack totems here. But attackers can also defend your base if there are enemies in proximity. So if there's enemies attacking your totem or your flanking positions here, they will push backwards in an attempt to repel the enemy. Now, one thing the attacker will not do, and you will never see, is them up the back of the base. They will pretty much only move forward or to around the flanker or the escort position, meaning if you are in the back of the enemy's base, you will not have to worry about their attackers, but if the enemy is in the back of your base, your attackers will not help you. So overall, that is the attacking position. Offensive, defensive, and a very good one. Generally, you want to put your strongest, beefiest units in the front line in the attacking position here. The next position is the most important position. It is the flanker position. The flanker position is going to completely ignore everything in the entirety of the game other than the enemy's totems. They're going to make a beeline straight for the enemy's base, and they will mindlessly channel on totems. Even if they are going to die, they will continue to try and attempt to channel the totems. So the most important role is this one, because these are directly associated with how fast you will kill the enemy. Have better flankers, enemy dies faster. It's as simple as that. And prioritizing getting the best flankers in the game from the shops is one of the fastest ways to improve your clear speed and overall success rate. So flankers are definitely super important, but they're incredibly silly, so they're not going to help you defend or really anything else other than kill the enemy base quickly. The next position is also very powerful, but it works a little bit differently. The escort position units will always try and unconditionally follow you. There's a bit of an imaginary radius around your character here, and if escort units aren't in that radius, they will try and get inside it. So an example is, if you reposition to the back of the enemy's base, the escort units will drop whatever they're doing until they can make their way to you. Even if it means walking through the enemy's base, a massive battlefield, and even maybe dying, they will still try and make their way to you. And when they are where you are, they're going to try and attempt to copy what you're doing, but if you're not doing anything, you're just standing around trying not to die, they will try and intelligently do what they think is best in the situation, which many times is going to mean channeling on totems. Overall, the escort role is incredibly powerful and very strong, but the nature of it is more offensive, and you don't really need a high caliber of unit because they're going to be walking around with you most of the time, so you generally put some of your weakest units here which have reasonable mobility. The final position here, defender, is in my opinion the weakest of the four positions with my current understanding, and the reason for that is that they cannot help you win the game, they can only prevent you from losing. The defender will stay in your base pretty much unconditionally and only move and activate when an enemy enters your base and begins attacking, meaning they are never going to pressure the enemy and they are never going to do anything that will cause you to win the game. If you only have 4 defenders and you stayed in your base trying to defend with them, you actually could not win the game. It would be impossible unless you had a flanker or attacker still alive. So for that reason, defenders are lowest on my list here. Alright, now that that's out of the way, let me give you guys a few tips which is gonna really put things into place and allow you to completely smash the mechanic. Tip number 1 is that the enemy's commander will pretty much always move into your base immediately and stay there. And they're going to bring all their escorts right there with them, and they will start trying to engage your units or start channeling on your totems. This can be very useful when you're trying to think up strategies and tactics, and we're going to use this in a second here. Tip number 2, the enemy will pretty much always unconditionally be stronger than you. This is round 1 here, and you can see that all of the enemy's units here are just going to be way better than mine, and they just are worth way more favor, which is the currency you get to buy units. So if you try and fight them fair, you will unconditionally lose. Point number 3, the enemy gets advantages over you where you don't get them. When you are channeling a totem and trying to destroy a totem, if you get hit by a breath of air, you will be stunned. Same goes for your units, they will also be stunned. But if the enemy's units are hit by your units or anything else, they will not be stunned. They will merely be interrupted for like 1 second, which is incredibly unfair. And in some cases, even when you hit them with a strike or your allies hit them with a strike, they won't be interrupted. So it's not built to be fair, unfortunately. So they definitely have a massive edge over you if you're playing fair. So you have to use the fact that you're a human and they're a computer to your advantage to win. Alright, so next up is team building. Let me show you guys how I've been building my teams for really good success. So the first and most important position that I prioritize is the flanker position to try and get quick wins here. So I always put my fastest units in here, so a Tuatara is a good example. Either of the Kunekunes is good, and then I'm going to chuck the remainder 2 units which I have, which I think are pretty decent flankers, the warriors here, and that's going to be the basis of my team here. So next up, we're going to see if we have any units who are specialized in their role. So the Tidecaller is a really specialized defender, so we're going to put them in the defender position because, you know, that's what they're good at. If you have any units like that, definitely put them where they belong because that will be better overall than putting them in another position. So the next thing you can do is you can either put attackers or escorts next. Generally, the more conservative approach is to go with attackers. If you want to make sure that you don't lose, putting 4 attackers next is prioritized. But if you want to go for quick wins and you want to overall smash the opponent, you can go for escorts before attackers because they will help you win faster here. In this situation, I don't want to lose, so I'm going to go ahead and put the attackers next as a bit more of a defensive option. And let me show you guys exactly how a round plays out here. So you can expect to die a whole lot. I'm probably going to die in this round, in fact. But you can see here, what I want to do first is try and come and get some of the enemy's defenders out of the way. And I'm going to help any unit which I see trying to channel on a totem. So whenever you see the minimap show up with blue, like down there, you want to go and try and help them out. And then you can just kill the enemy's totems real quick, smart. Get this guy down before this turtle hits me. You know, try and dodge the enemies when they come at you, but you can see here this is working out pretty damn well for me, and the enemy is going down real fast. We are dodging around, but you can see whenever the ally is channeling there, I'm going to try and get on and help them out. And once you get to a point in where the enemy is down 1 or 2 totems compared to you, it's basically impossible to lose for the most part, and you've got a massive W. Like, I could go AFK right now, and my guys would still win. I'm just actually going to do that so you guys can see. If we go AFK, we're not going to lose. So once the initial few totems are down, you are absolutely going to win. So the question is, what the hell did I just do there? And how can you guys do that too? So what we just did there is initiate a base race, which is incredibly effective, as you guys could see, and got the enemy down quick smart. And it pretty much uses everything we just spoke about earlier. The reason that this is so effective is that the enemy's attackers are pushing forward, and because you're in the back of the enemy's base, they're not going to be going anywhere near you, meaning 4 units you already don't have to worry about messing around with here. The enemy's flankers, as explained earlier, are going to unconditionally attack your base and your totems. And as I mentioned as well, the enemy's unique monster is pretty much always going to make a beeline for your base, and they're going to take all their escorts with them. There are some scenarios in which the unique enemy will hang around a little bit, but for the most part, they're going straight into your base. Meaning the only 4 units left to defend the enemy's base in the entirety of the game is their defenders. Now, if you can crowd control them, kill them, or just distract them enough that your flankers and your escorts, if you have any, can kill the enemy's totems, it's over. They're going to lose very quickly, and as long as you're not losing a ton of units back at your base, it's done. Now, The one thing which can hinder this strategy and mess it up is of course if you die on the way, because all of your escorts upon dying will move back to your base and you'll be in a defensive position in which you can be in a bit of trouble and you can start losing a lot of totems because, as I mentioned, your team is always unconditionally weaker than the opponents, so you will lose in a battle of attrition if you're on the floor and you don't have any insane team compositions. But we'll get to that. So overall, this is by far the best strategy, but you're not going to be able to do it every time because you can die sometimes, and in addition to that, there can be some unit compositions which are just insanely hard to do this against, namely the team which has bear traps is just a nightmare to try and go for a base race with. So what is the best way to play? What is the best tactic in the game to play overall? So this enemy team is definitely stronger than me, and they have 2 enemy units which are incredibly strong at dealing with my totems, and they also have proximity shields. Trying to base race this opponent is probably not a very wise idea, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how to play, but first let me explain to you what I'm going to do. So as a ranged character, the position in which you want to move if you are unsure if you are going to win in a base race is actually down here. You want to move here because it'll allow you to defend your base easily with ranged attacks, but also attack the enemy's base and progress towards a win. Because you're essentially attacking and threatening this totem here, allowing your flankers to come up and hit them, but you're also, defending at the same time. You're also drawing all units to you at the bottom of the screen, meaning your flankers and attackers up the top can actually get in and kill some totems as well. Now, when you're in this position, you can either retreat if it gets really scary and you want to sit up the back and try and defend there, because up the back of your base is the safest place to be. You won't be getting hit by any crazy AoEs or anything like that. Or if you think you're starting to win, you can move forward and go for a base race in the back of their base here. So let's see how that plays out here. My team is definitely weaker. I didn't buy any units this round to show you guys this here. Let's see if I can win. So the enemy has a few units which are very spooky, so I'm going to play defensively for a little bit here. And whenever I see an X on my screen here, I am going to knock them out and just try not to die. And I'm going to let my flankers do some heavy lifting here. You can see that they are going for the enemy's totems here, but I know that the enemy is stronger than me, so I'm not going to go ahead and try and help them here. I'm going to let them do their job. I'm going to let them get their stuff done here, and we are just going to try and defend here. Moving back to this neutral position here, going to try and shoot a few TSs in here to try and take out some enemy units to try and help my guys out. But overall, this is what we're looking at here. And you can see that it's pretty much done now. I'm going to move into the offensive position here and kill some more enemy units. And they're pretty much going to go down here. Now that we're in their base, we're on top of them. We're going to kill them, no worries. But if that had gone south, we would have moved back into the back of my base here and just set up here and just basically shot off screen. At least that's what I have been doing. So overall, that's a good, quick way to get some easy wins there. That is the tactic and the overall positioning of your character. So next, what units should you buy with all that juicy favor that you've been accumulating, and what enemies should you choose to fight? Alright, next up is the best units to go for. Now, despite what everyone's saying, it actually does really matter which units you go for, because having a team which is strong defensively is going to make sure that when you die, you will not immediately lose, and having a strong which is good offensively means that you're going to kill the opponent faster, which is faster clear speed. You should aim to buy units every single round that you complete, and always try and spend all of your favor. Now, the units which are best are going to be on a spreadsheet, which I made for you guys here, of course. Now, overall, we're not going to be able to go over all the units. We're just going to go over the bad units and the insane units because we just don't have enough time to cover them all. But first and foremost, let's go over the ranking system here. So first up, we have in red, bad units. So bad units are units which are not very good and then absolutely not worth the favor costs that they have associated with them. You're better off selling these and buying a different unit with the favor that you get back for them. However, in the early rounds, you still do want to keep them because a body on the board is better than nothing, and it's only in the end game that you want to kind of start replacing these guys. We'll go over which ones those are. Decent and good are units which you can absolutely pick up off the vendor if you have the associated favor with them, but likely there is better alternatives than what they are, and they're absolutely not something that you would target farm favor off of a specific enemy for. The insane units are units which you absolutely want on your team if you can get them. They're so good that they are definitely team defining, and they're going to single-handedly allow you to make things happen which you normally wouldn't be able to. Insane units are the ones which you should be targeting favor for whenever you see it pop up and you know that the unit is going to be available. So much so that I often prioritize rewards like 8 or 9C below going for the favor of an insane unit. Let's talk about the units. Alright, let's kick things off with the insane units first. The first unit I want to talk about is the Fieldmaster. So the Fieldmaster is a unit which you can buy off of this guy here by using the Horseshoe favor. The Fieldmaster is the unit which summons walls. Now, the walls that it summons are insane. So the walls will block enemy projectiles, which is great, but also bug out the enemy's AI. Now, both of those things are going to contribute to you surviving longer. Because the enemy will be bugged, they won't be attacking your totems as frequently. Because there's projectiles getting blocked by them, you won't die as frequently to projectiles, and overall, your units will be more protected. Now, this guy, you want to put him on flanker first and foremost, but if you've got flankers full, put him on attacker. If attackers are full, put him on defender. This is, in my opinion, the best unit in the game because he's both an offensive unit and a defensive unit, and overall just an absolute powerhouse. The games where I have like 4 field masters versus the ones where I have none is like night and day. This guy, try him out, give him a go, he's crazy, and prioritize favor wherever you can on the board when you're going for rewards. The next unit is the bird, the Thunderbird, which comes from Velako, which is the shield here. The Thunderbird is absolutely crazy for offense. It's by far the best offensive unit in the game. And the reason for that is that, first and foremost, it's incredibly fast. This thing's basically got a mage blood on it. In addition to that, it also lightning warps, but it has no cast time. So it immediately, bam, will teleport across the field. Now, this is insanely powerful because it synergizes with the Field Master, but it will also protect itself from getting stuck in enemy battles. Okay, so generally the scenario is enemy unique monster is going to be in your base. Enemy attackers in your base. The Thunderbird will teleport over all of that action straight into the enemy's base. What it'll also teleport over is all of the Field Master's walls, so it won't become bugged by the Field Master, making this an absolutely insane unit, and because it's so fast, it's going to be really, really good at killing the enemy quickly. So prioritizing the Thunderbird, it's one of the best units, is never a bad idea. If you're going for speed clearing, this is absolutely the best unit in the game for that. Okay, so the next insane unit to talk about is going to be the Caldera Ravager. Now, this one only becomes available later on in the rounds. I think it's about after round 3 or 4, and it comes from Comb here, which is the fiery looking favor here. You can see it's not available yet because I'm not further enough into the tournament, and sometimes it's not even available in every match. So you do have to be wary, and for that reason, I wouldn't recommend target farming Comb's favor, but you can really go for this unit and it can be insane. The reason this unit is so insane is that it puts down like 5 or 6 cremations when it spawns, and those cremations persist for like 10 or 20 seconds, it feels like. And while those cremations are in place, they're going to be interrupting everything in its radius here. And it's also mega AoE, so this can allow this unit to deal with multiple units at once. It's also incredibly tanky, meaning it's also fantastic for that point as well. So this unit is probably one of, if not the best attacker and defenders in the game. For that reason, at least in my opinion and my experience here. So Caldera Ravager, very, very good there. It is a bit expensive and it's not always available though. So it's kind of a situational thing which you can get in some of your best runs. The next one here is the Spearfisher. This one is definitely very, very strong, but unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, the defender position is not the strongest, and it is primarily a defender from what I've experienced. So the Spearfisher comes from this vendor over here, and they are a ranged unit which will spam ranged basic attacks at the enemy, but also they will cast an ensnare. And the ensnare is basically going to be a huge slow on the enemy. Now, this is particularly effective because when you're dealing with enemies, having them slow means they're going to be less mobile, they're going to get to you less quickly, but they're also going to be able to get to totems less quickly. So having Spearfishers as defenders is also outstanding. Overall, big fan of the Spearfisher, and I always try and set these up in the defensive position as soon as I can get to them, and whenever I have this white swirly currency here. So those are the 4 units which I recommend going for if you can get them. They're all reasonably cheap, and that's part of the reason I put them as so highly ranked, because they are reasonably cost efficient. There are other units which are better in yellow and green, but the chances are they're just more difficult to obtain or more expensive, and overall not worth the cost. Now, the bad units that you're going to have to deal with here. So the first is the Fire Breather from Calm. This guy is terrible. Don't go for him. Sell him as fast as you can. The main reason is that he will always just set himself on fire and explode immediately, meaning he'll never channel on totems, he'll never be around to defend, and overall it's just not that good. The next one is Satanic Shell. This thing is 2300. You should never buy this. It's really slow, meaning it's not going to help you too much. It can be an okay defender, but at 2300 it's just not worth it. It's way too much favor, and it's also on one of the best unit vendors in the game. Next up is the Consuming Kunekune. This guy is not that great because when an enemy dies, finally, he's going to spend 5 or 6 seconds consuming that enemy, and he's going to essentially stun himself, meaning he's not contributing to attacking, he's not contributing to killing totems, and if you're defending, he's going to be AFK having a meal, which is not great. Next up is Frenzy Monger. It basically functions the same as Fire Breather. He's going to kill himself, which is not great because he's not going to be doing anything for you. And lastly is the Lunar Turtle here. The Lunar Turtle is incredibly slow and overall isn't going to be very good for the cost that you go for it. You're much better off buying Field Masters by vendoring this Lunar Turtle. So overall, those are the bad units and the good units. Let's talk a little bit more about maximizing efficiency in game. Alright, so next up is min-maxing your shopping. Now there's three things that we're trying to aim to do here. First and foremost, we want to maximize the amount of units we have on the board. At least we want to maximize flankers, attackers, and escorts, and maybe a few defenders here or there. So try and keep as many bodies on the board as you can. Next up, we want to try and replace any yellow and red units with green or purple units. And finally, we want to try and prioritize wheel and deal and get as many of those purple units as we can as early as possible. So let me show you guys how I do that. First and foremost, I check my favor here. And the main thing I'm looking for here is, do I have any favor of the good type? So I'm looking at horseshoes, I'm looking at shields, I'm looking at white swirlies, and I'm looking at comb. So first up, I'm always going to come to Navali, and I'm going to go ahead and buy the unit off of Navali here. A little tip here you guys can check is by using control click, you can immediately get into the vendor window here. So next up, I'm going to see, okay, do I have any favor of anyone else? So I do have some with the Jade. Okay, so I can buy a Jade Hulk here. This is a green unit. We're going to buy that. Next up, we have 2100, 500 of comb here, which is a lot. But you can see if we come down here, we could buy a Field Master, but we don't have enough favor this round. So this is a scenario in which I would actually consider either moving favor from another master over to this one, or I would consider selling bad units. Now, if we remember point number one, we always want to maximize how many units we have on the board. So in this case, I'm going to actually prioritize moving favor over from other vendors to this one. So if we come over to Navali, we can buy a piece of equipment here. If we come over to Comb, we can buy a unit of this guy here. And we can go ahead and now go back over to the horseshoe guy here. We can sell the equipment and we can sell that unit we just bought, and we can buy the Field Master we wanted. So we just moved overall all that favor from Comb, which we couldn't use right now, over to the horseshoe guy. And that's going to really improve our clear speed here, which is a big deal. All right, now that we've got a few more units, I want to give you guys some tips on where to position them for maximum efficiency. So first up, the insane unit, the Thunderbird. Thunderbird should always go in flanker, and once you have 4 of them in flankers, you should stop buying them. But until that point, they're good to buy. The Field Master should first and foremost go in any spare flanker positions that aren't taken up by Thunderbirds, and after that, if you have more Field Masters, put them in Attacker, and if you fill that up too, you can go ahead and put them in Defender. Now, I don't have any, but if you have Caldera Ravagers, put them in any Attacker position, and prioritize putting them there above any other position, even over any other unit. If you have more Caldera Ravagers than that, for whatever reason, you can put some in Defender. Next up and last up is going to be the Spearfisher. So the Spearfisher should always go in Defender, and once you have 4 of them, you don't need to buy any more of them because they are primarily a Defender, and you can start moving favor from that vendor over to another one. Now, in terms of every other unit, we've already talked about that. Put any bulky units in the front, put any fast units in the flanker position like the Tuatara, and put any garbage Navali units or units which you're not a big fan of in the Escort position, because Escort is only going to be there for channeling totems. This is pretty much where you put all of the dregs, and anything in Defender should try to be a ranged unit or a bulky unit. Alright, I want to give you guys a few tips on enemies here, so you can avoid some pretty rough encounters. So there are 3 enemy types which I find to be incredibly difficult to face personally, which you should definitely be on your toes about. The first one is Ahuana, who is going to be the bow chick. She has a ton of spear dancers on her team. They're an enemy which will dash to you and one-shot you. So it's definitely pretty spooky to go up against her. Exercise extreme caution, especially when base racing her. I don't recommend that. The second one is Rakiata. Rakiata has a bunch of allies who put down bear traps. If you try and walk in her base, chances are you're going to get randomly one-shot by them, so don't base race her either, is my recommendation. The last one here is going to be the Hinakora enemy. I don't remember her name, but she does the big chaos explosions and also the global chaos nukes. She is a complete pain. Try and avoid fighting her if possible. She also has allies which put up like totem force fields, which are incredibly annoying. She is definitely one I try and avoid wherever possible. But other than those 3, there are a few enemies that you want to watch out for as well and alter your playstyle around. The first one is going to be the Thunderbird. If you see the enemy has a ton of Thunderbirds in the flanking or attacking position, chances are you want to play defense, because in a base race, if they have like 4 Thunderbirds and you have 0, they're going to beat you, because as I mentioned earlier, that unit is insane. So you definitely want to exercise a bit of caution there. The next one is the Spear Dancer. If you see the Spear Dancer anywhere in any position, chances are it's going to be one-shotting you all game. So definitely exercise caution here, and it can be a bit of an incentive not to go for a base race. The other unit that you guys should watch out for is the Trawler. The Trawler is essentially the unit which puts down the bear traps. If you see the Trawler on the enemy team, definitely try and be a little bit careful with going for base race, because you will randomly get one shot by running into the enemy's base and you'll lose a lot of tempo. The only other unit that you guys might want to look out for is the Titanic Shell. When they have that on the enemy's team, you have to kill it with your own damage, and if you are a low damage build or a ZDPS build, you may have some trouble with that one. So those are the units and the enemies to look out for, at least the ones which I do. Alright, to finish things off, I wanted to share with you guys the finals of a 1700 rating match here. So we are up against Utula, and we're going to take a quick look and see what we're up against. So you can see I've got 2 Caldera Ravages in the front here, I've got my Thunderbird over here, and a ton of Field Masters, as well as a few other green and purple units sprinkled around here. And my enemy doesn't really have anything too scary. He doesn't have any of the really dangerous units like Speed Dancers. He does have 1 Thunderbird in attack, but there's nothing really like Trawlers or anything like that to be worried about here. So I am going to immediately initiate a base race here because his team looks weak to me. So we're going to try and make sure we don't die here in the very initial stages here. But I think we should be good to go on a base race here. So here we are in the back lines. We're going to wait for our escorts to catch up here. And we're going to see if we can find any things to snipe here. So we're looking for blue totems on the minimap here, which means our units are attacking. And generally, that's a pretty good sign of we can go in as well. But the enemies are pretty tanky here. We're going to try and get for that one. That one's down. Ooh, there we go. We do take a bit of a death there. But just by being there, our escorts were doing most of the work. But you can see that we're not losing too much progress on our base here. We're going to go ahead and try and dive back into the enemy's base again and see if we can make something happen here. So we are getting this totem down here with our escort. See if we can get it done. There it is. That one's down. We're going to go back into the back here so we can get some more totems down. I think we can maybe get this one here if we channel on it together. Yep, looks like we're going to get that one down. You can see I'm trying not to get stunned here so I don't die, because dying is like really bad, because then our escorts will go back to base and it's no good here. You generally want to prioritize trying to go for the totems your allies are going for here. But right now, my allies look like they're having a bit of trouble here. They're going for... Oh, there's one. Okay, get that one there with our allies. There we go. That one's down. But yeah, whenever I see them channeling on something, I'm going to jump on there as well. Ooh, that's the Chaos Degen thing I talked about from Hinokora. Looks like Utula has one of those. And you will see that some of the really dangerous units can end up on other team members, which are not related to their factions there. So I did run into that one. Bit of a misplay, but that's how it goes. So you can see that this is the Caldera Ravager here. Really going to town here. And that's why they're so strong, because they just crowd control everything. Man, that's my 2 Caldera Ravagers up the front there, and that's why they are purple units. Thunderbird going to town here. Ooh, I can't get in there. Almost made a mistake again. My escorts should be on their way though. Well, that one's healing. The totem's healing themselves. So we're going to go ahead and go for this one instead here. Here are the escorts. The field masters putting their walls up there, which is nice. Get a bit of defense. But we should be able to pretty much sweep the enemy now. That is, I believe, it's a Bloodbound Warrior, so we can go straight for a totem here. Oh, he's healing up that totem, so we'll go for a different one. Actually, we'll help this guy out. Should come around now, but yeah, we can see the enemy is basically done for. We have the momentum now, so there's nothing the enemy can do here. And we're pretty much going to get the guaranteed W here, even if we go AFK. Now, unfortunately, this Hinokora totem here is going to require that we kill the enemy associated with them to get that down, which is going to increase the playtime of my video, unfortunately. But that's just the way it goes. So we're going to try and find them and knock them out. I actually can't even see them. Where are they? Death's Guide, that's them there, Death's Guide. So when they die, we're going to immediately channel their totem, try and get it down quickly, and that should be pretty good there. Alright, take him out, try and make sure they don't respawn. Another tip to you guys is while you're channeling on a totem, the enemy can actually not respawn from it, which is pretty damn good as well. And in general, enemies respawn every 2 seconds from totems in the end game, so that's definitely pretty good to start channeling on them to prevent them from starting to respawn. It's also another reason why the base race strat is so good, because you can stun the totems the enemy is going to be respawning from. Alright, so that should be pretty much it. Ancestral Totem goes down. That is an in-game final match there at 1700, and how I play things. As a final little note here, I wanted to talk about a few builds which I see being the strongest for this mechanic overall. So there's generally 2 different approaches you can take to this mechanic here. You can either play full damage, in the case that you kind of do maximum damage and you kill all the enemy units, or you can go ahead and do Z DPS and focus on crowd control. So as I mentioned earlier, units respawn very quickly from the totem. So if you're killing them, you have to be killing them fast to make sure they're all down. But if you do that, well, your allies are basically just going to be able to fully channel on all the totems and they'll have nothing to interrupt them. but in the end game, there is some deep delve scaling going on, so they do get very, very tanky. So you're probably going to need 20 to 40 million damage overall to get it done. And if you die, you'll still be in trouble of losing the game. So that's definitely one strategy. But if you do that, I recommend going with a totem build or a minion build, because then you can still be mobile and start channeling totems to help things along. The other approach is to go for a Z DPS build, focusing on crowd control. Despite the many nerfs to crowd controlling the units in this field, I have tried a few builds and there is quite a few of them. So slowing the enemies down by 50% of their speed, which is still possible, is very strong. You can kind of ping pong between channeling on totems, and the enemy's melee units can't do anything because they're just so slow. You can also still knock back the enemy 5 times, which can knock them off totems, which is very good for disrupting, but also pushing them away from you, and combining that with the slow, it can be very strong. Now, I also think that there's probably a lot of room for a build which is just full tank. We're talking like 13k life, max res, all sorts of stuff like that. Because if you don't die, your escorts will pretty much do all the work for you. They'll start channeling totems, they'll just start being really annoying, and if you combine that with any sort of crowd control, you're looking pretty damn good. There is also a third strategy, which is probably going to be one of the better ones if it actually ends up working. I haven't tested it yet, but that is Frost Wall. So Frost Wall is essentially like interrupting on steroids, because a lot of the most dangerous units are things like the Thunderbird and the Spear Dancer, and if you put yourself in Frost Walls and then also have phasing so you can stand in them, well, enemies shouldn't be able to get to you, meaning you can Frost Wall a totem and just stand in there and channel it, and they literally can't do anything. Now, I haven't tested this, but I imagine that's probably the next logical step in terms of cheese builds. Overall, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. There's so much to talk about in this mechanic. It's so much information. I'm not able to talk about it as much as in depth as I want to, but hopefully this has been informative and given you guys some information to improve your gameplay. And until next time, hopefully you guys have enjoyed. Cheers.